Now, when I get pulled over by law enforcement in my Mustang convertible, say, I could look like a douchebag when I got my Van Halen cranked, and it creates a different stereotype than if you get pulled over while driving your RV. And I don't think anybody's done a video on getting pulled over by the local police in your RV, because it's a different kettle of fish and a different set of problems if you open up that can of worms with a bit of attitude. So let's talk about this and give you some rules to survive getting pulled over by the police in your RV.
Waiting on the Greyhound to Chicago. I've got all my bags packed up, ready to leave. Everybody here.
When the officer approaches your RV, he knows you got a lot of crap in there. He don't even know who you got in the back, and he definitely knows you probably got some steak knives at the very least for weapons. So you got to start thinking and being mindful. And of course you're going to ask yourself, well, why the hell do I know anything about this? Well, I'm going to give you a bit of my credentials without getting specific. I have in the past worked in government and had to deal with douchebags that have issues with, let's say, authority. Now, luckily, I'm genetically blessed and I don't get into pissing matches, and I know how to stay professional. And I have been pulled over in Islamic republics by police and in communist Cuba, and I've survived in one piece, and I'm still here to talk to you about it. So listen to me, I've got a few things to say that could actually save your ass, and more importantly, even save you some money. Okay, let's start with rule number one when you get pulled over. Don't be a douche. Seriously. Even if you think you're in the right, doesn't matter. Remain calm. So, remember rule number one, don't be a douche. Always drive with a properly insured vehicle with a valid license, okay? I don't know why people have a problem understanding this. It's just the way it is, folks. I don't get why people don't like spending money to protect themselves from financial calamity through insurance. And really, a driver's license? Come on, folks. It's rule number two. And keep in mind rule number one while you're thinking about rule number two. Now, the thing about rule number one and rule number two is if you have not observed those first two rules, what's going to happen is that beautiful RV you got that you're driving in is going to get seized and put in impound. Now, the problem with that is a couple things. The impound fee is going to be much higher. The towing fee will be much higher. And of course, if you're a full-timer like me, all your stuff is going with it. I don't think you want that. So keep in mind rule number two and rule number one to avoid having any more problems. Oh, and don't let your dog honk the horn while the cop is talking to you. Ooh, which brings me to rule number three. Control your dog if you have a larger predatory animal like I do. Just nothing worse than having the dog create a situation, because obviously the officer pulling you over isn't going to have a conversation with the dog, and the conversation will kind of end in a little bit of violence towards your animal. Could be a beautiful, lovely animal, but you don't want to see anything bad happen, now do we? Now, remaining calm has some really good benefits. Now, what you want to do is, it's the art of, kind of like the Jedis do, you know, with, this is not the drones you're looking for. But you don't want to kiss ass. If you kiss too much ass, big red flag. So it's a little dance of being respectful and calm, but yet kissing a tiny bit of ass, but not much. So if you can learn to do that dance, you can avoid some problems. So moving to rule number four, make sure your driver's license and your registration is handy where the officer can see it. Not in the back where you're going to just suddenly take off and he's thinking you're loading the shotgun in the back to come out and greet him. So think about where you're going to place that registration and driver's license in a convenient, safe location for everybody, including, most importantly, yourself. Rule number 5, when cited, sign the damn receipt. Just move on, even if you think you're right. Challenge it in court, You could easily win if you are in fact correct. Just move on and avoid what's going to happen if you don't. Potentially your RV is going to get searched very thoroughly, and because you got a lot of cubby holes and hidey hole spots, this is going to take a while. This is going to be a long time and a big inconvenience for you if you do not comply. Now the next rule is about tattoos and stereotypes. You need to be mindful of how you look. I got nothing against tattoos. Some of them are great. But you might want to drive with them covered if you're going to get pulled over, because that conjures up stereotypes of subversive people and things like that, which could absolutely be incorrect, but will inevitably lead you to problems potentially. So be mindful of that. Now, if you are unfortunately a cannabis user and you're in a jurisdiction that does not allow that, you could have some problems if they discover any of the paraphernalia, etc., etc. So I suggest you be mindful of that. The last thing you need is a little bit of cannabis to be discovered in your RV, and suddenly the whole RV is being seized and you've got a lot of expenses and problems aside from coming up with the bail money. Just not worth it. So consume your cannabis and buy more when you arrive at the next place, maybe. I don't know. I'm not a cannabis user, so these problems do not fall upon me. But I am mindful of those who do, because there's a lot of actually very law-abiding people that use cannabis. So I'm not, an old fogey about this. And I really don't get my shit in a knot about it, but I don't want to see any of you have problems either. Now, the last thing I want you to think about in terms of a rule is try to use the power of suggestion and submission in your favor. If the officer finds you camping in a place you shouldn't be at, just pose questions to them to be the solvers of your problems and say, sir, where do you think I should camp tonight? Where would that be? Where would a good place for me to camp tonight without me causing any problems? You kind of throw it in their court, and if you pose the question in a kind of fair manner, you're probably going to get a fair answer to it. Just saying. Don't just hide in the RV and wait for them to break your window to come on in and see what's going on. That's really another expensive problem you want to avoid. Now, you got to keep really self-tuned in terms of egos when you're out there on the highways and byways of North America. The bigger the ego of the guy that you're getting pulled over by, the bigger the potential problem. So you need to be mindful of this, because let's face it, everybody's human, and some people in the constabulary have extremely large egos. So the bigger the ego, the more respect you got to give. I'm not saying it's fair. I'm just saying it's goddamn truthful. Okay? So, hey, it's the way it is, man. Deal with it. So, in the meantime, folks, stay safe out there. Keep your wheels in the ground. Definitely don't have your wheels get impounded and have expensive problems. Be good to each other out there. I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.